各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看美南电视，我是 Jimmy 马健。我们今天同样的由我们金挪威跟我们一起来讨论今天的时事。How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing fine. Welcome back, Jimmy. We missed you last week.
I missed it greatly. There were a lot of things that went on that we didn't get a chance to talk about. Congratulations.
But the news has continued on, so you and I have to run to catch up.
That's right. 我们这个新闻呢，每天都在更变，但是我们一定要 Jim 说的，我们一定要一直追上去，就是赶上这个时事。我们2个礼拜前讲的这个题目，我们并没有讨论完，因为我们是很深度的。我们讲到这个美国与这个比如说中国或别的国家的治理的模式 ，the governance models 跟这个外交跟经济有很大的关联。那因为这个治理的模式跟处理危机的模式，也根据这个历史，尤其是第2次世界大战之后。的历史有很大的关系。Jim, so 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the difference in governance models that each country uses, and it affected. We had to talk about the history. We had to talk about after World War II and how it affects the economy, how it affects foreign policy. And today's news, we touched upon it a little bit when we were chatting earlier. Steve Bannon, chief strategist, former chief strategist for the Trump administration, has been arrested. What is your view on this news? What do you?
Well, I think, Jimmy, it underscores today's events, whether they are real or only symbolic. They underscore the reality of the brilliance of the United States governance model. In other words, one fundamental pillar of our system, and there are many, but let's just focus on the one, is the rule of law and the concept that justice is blind. Everyone is treated equally by the justice system. So, looking at what we've learned over the last only 2 or 3 hours about Mr. Bannon, the first thing is to remember everyone in the United States is innocent until proven guilty. So we must remember that his indictment means that there are alleged crimes, not proven crimes, but he has been taken into custody. The second thing it means, and that we can deduce from it, is even though Mr. Bannon has been very close to President Trump was not informed about the case being built against Mr. Bannon. He had no knowledge of the case, and even if he had, he would have been powerless to stop it. In other words, the President of the United States cannot interfere with the justice system. It operates independently for the protection of everyone. The third thing is, I think it's very important to recognize who are the prosecutors here. The prosecutors are the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York City.
Southern District of New York.
Southern District of New York. Okay. Yes, there are several in New York City. New York City is so big. The woman who signed the indictment is a new appointee of President Trump. Her name is Audrey Strauss, and she is the same person who signed the indictment of Ghislaine Maxwell about 6 weeks ago. And she was recently appointed because Mr. Trump fired her predecessor, Jeffrey Berman. There is a whole backlog, but the whole process and the personalities again underscore the independence of the justice system from the executive branch.
Oh, I love what you just said. All 3 points are very clear. I want to respond immediately to have a conversation, but I know I have to translate first.
Go ahead.
I don't miss the gist of the key point. 今天提到这件事情，这个川普当初这个最主要的基要的这个 strategist 这个策划人 Bannon 在这个媒体是有很大的影响力。 他说 Bannon 这样被逮捕，代表美国的民主跟司法还是公正公平的。美国有3大重要的地方，就是一，就是你如果被逮捕的话，你是 innocent until proven guilty， 就是你是在没有定罪，在没有经过法律程序之前，你是并不能被定罪的，你是无辜的。2就是这个川普政权不可以去intervene， 就是去干预这个司法。3就是这个检察官有独立的行政权。这3点我都不同意。All 3 points from the bright side is great, but as a journalist,I have to point out that all 3 points have some issues. The first one, I actually do agree with you. In the U.S., you're innocent until proven guilty. If you're rich, you get attorneys, and you could beat basically any case. We've seen that happen. O.J. Simpson, perfect examples, so many. Second point, Trump cannot intervene. Trump tried to intervene. That leads to the third point. The prosecutor of Southern District of New York. She was appointed by Trump? No. Her predecessor was fired, and then he refused to step down until he negotiated to have her take over because she was his deputy. They were going to appoint the chairman of the board of the security, one of the financial institutions in Washington, D.C. I have his name. They're going to appoint him. So Jeffrey said no because the Southern District of New York is also called the Sovereign District in New York. They're bipartisan. There's no politics. They both sides. They have a history of it. That's the beauty of the United States of America, the check and balances. Mm-hmm. So to say that Trump did not try to intervene, he tried. He failed. That's why this country is great. That's why all the criticism mainly from China actually now, because of our pandemic response, because of the death rate, or from Europe, from a lot of countries now. I firmly believe I could disagree with them because this shows this is still the greatest country on earth. 这还是在美国还是世界上最强的国家之一，因为这个平衡这个制度。Jim, would you?
There's another aspect of all of this. You're correct about the precise steps that led to Ms. Strauss being appointed here. She is known as a down the middle, adhere to the law, very, very straight attorney. She has the reputation of not being swayed by politics in the least. My observation from outside, and I do not know anything other than what I've read in the newspapers over the last 2 hours, she would not have issued an indictment if the case were not very, very strong. The quality of the evidence, the confirmation from multiple parties, this is very serious business for Mr. Bannon. I continue to remind myself, as well as everyone else, innocent until proven guilty. But this is a big deal. Now, back to Mr. Trump. Do you want to translate that? And then I'll get back to Mr. Trump.
我们这个检察官提的，Jim说的这个检察官是很中立的，但是这个整个美国纽约南方的这个联邦检察局是一个独立的司法机构，他们的这个绰号叫做 Sovereign District of New York， 而不是 Southern， 不是南方，是 Sovereign， 是独立的，因为他们不受到各方的压力。我刚刚讲过了，他的前任，这位检察官的前任，其实川普想要把他炒掉，是把他炒掉了，但是他在去任之前。交涉要留下这一位现任的这个接手，而不是由川普指派，因为川普想要停止这些调查。那这个很重要的就是Jim 讲的说，他过去2个小时看到的，他也是看到是这个大家都看到的新闻，他并不能够说有什么第一手的内幕消息。Go ahead, Jim. What were you going to say?
The next thing in looking at this case, because it's also important here, is to understand what Mr. Bannon was indicted for. In other words, what is the alleged crime? The alleged crime is that he and others created a private foundation to raise money to, quote, fund the wall. In other words, to provide financing for the wall on the border between the United States and Mexico. The allegation is that despite his public statements to the contrary, he took some of the money, not in fact, but allegedly a great deal of the money that was contributed to build the wall. That would be a crime, hence the indictment. Mr. Trump, at the time, said he was not in favor of Mr. Bannon's activity, that he did not believe that there should be private contributions to build the wall, that is a government function and a government responsibility. So my point is, this will be complicated from many different perspectives, but I believe Ms. Strauss and her team of attorneys will zero in on the narrow definition of the crime itself.
I just think it's amazing that Trump's entire inner circle of advisors, former advisors, personal attorneys, chief strategists, every single one has been convicted, indicted, or arrested. Like I said again, that's why this is a true democracy. That's why this country works. Mm-hmm. The heat is closing in on him. Mm-hmm. Now, I find it ironic that Bannon is going to go to jail for this, for something that is $1 million, $2 million, whatever it was, instead of all the other heinous crimes that he has perpetrated in the last 4 or 5 years, the lies and the divide he has caused. Let me go and translate what he said to our audience. Jim 刚讲的说，这个川普总统，川普不是总统，川普这小小子在当初呢，他有he tweeted， 他不同意这个 private funding 这个 wall。Bannon 被逮捕的理由是他当初在民间募款，想要支援川普政权的这个，想要在墨西哥跟美国边境盖墙盖一个 wall， 所以川普那个时候有推说他并不是赞同用私人募到的钱，因为他当初 campaign 的 promise 是 Mexico will pay for the wall， 是墨西哥会付这个钱。那当然，川普在竞选的时候开出支票，大部分都是没有瑞险的。然后他们这个弄了大概I think they got what, $25 million out of it?
Yes, apparently so. And they were accused of taking hundreds of thousands of dollars of the 25 million.
他弄了2000万啊，200万，然后自己拿去买了珠宝，买了船，挥霍。哎，不讲了，这种事情，我们没有什么好再讲川普的，因为这跟他是很有关联的，不能说他跟他没有关系。但是最重要是他这个 Bannon 被起诉的是这个罪名，对我来说其实是很好笑，因为 Bannon 其实做的坏事更多，他被起诉这个罪名只是贪污，等于是贪污和诈骗。但是他之前他的新闻 Breitbart News 的这个他所制造的在美国制造的仇恨，制造出来的假新闻，跟他引进这个俄国的这个影响美国选举的这些事情是更严重的罪名，但是这些罪名要在川普下台之前是没有办法翻出来的。So I just told the audience exactly what we talked about earlier. I find it ironic, but I also see this is definitely tied into the different governance model. This is a very unique governance model, and that it works in an established democracy. I mean, U.S. have over 200 years of trial and error. You know, a new country, a country that first tastes direct voting rights, it's very hard to get here, especially U.S. has a very large educated population.
Very important.
And free press, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Jim, go ahead.
Let's go back and use this example as an illustration of one of the other aspects of the governance model of the United States, and that is the 3 branches of government. What we've been talking about today so far is an example of the judiciary, the court system, the legal system. That is the 3rd branch of government. The other 2 branches of government get most of the attention. One is the executive branch. That's the president, governors, Congress, state legislatures, all the way down to city councils. They are the people who carry out the laws. The 2nd branch of government are the legislatures, starting with Congress, the United States Senate and the United States House, but also at the state level and down to cities and counties as well. They make the laws. The third branch of government, the court system, often gets overshadowed by the other two. But really, its main function is to hold the other two accountable. It makes sure that the laws that are passed are enforced properly, and if and when they're broken, there are either civil penalties or criminal penalties. And today's discussion is about criminal. And so the framers, our forefathers, as we call them, wanted a balance. It's like a balance of a three-legged stool. And to your point 2 minutes ago, Jimmy, this system has served the test of time over more than 200 years. It's been a very successful model. And those of us who are Americans have a great respect for it. And I think people from around the world that want to come to America also have a great respect for it, even though they may not understand all of the details.
美国这个三权分立很重要，刚刚 Jim 说的，也像我刚刚讲的，这个在美国这个民主的这个系统其实很独特，因为有200多年的经验，经历过了很多这个 trial and error， 也是有这个失败跟成功，也有很多法律其实是没有辩明的，但是最终达到现在的话，其实还是证明是有用的。虽然选出来一个像川普这样子的，但是这三权分立表示美国的司法、行政跟这个 executive 就是总统的这个行政，这三权其实司法是比较少受到重视的。这个司法独立是非常的重要。如果有关注台湾新闻的，就知道台湾的这个司法是完全没有跟政治没有脱离，所以才会走到这个地步。在中国的话，这个政治党政法治全部是一家的，也是没有办法分离，所以是没有办法得到公平的对待。全世界能够相信美国，所以在这里你要政治间捐款也好，你要这个影响政府也好，都有合法的管道。但是你只要犯了法，不管你是谁，还是一样会有司法的检调方面来追查你。So, like I compare this to what you said about the independence of the judicial branch. To say most of our audience are from Taiwan or China, compared to a so-called democracy in Taiwan, it doesn't work that way. Because in Taiwan, you have to pledge allegiance to the political party in power. There is no independent judicial anymore. Mm-hmm. But that also means there's no check and balance. So no matter who's in power, that is not good for the people. Mm-hmm. In China, obviously, you have to be a communist member. There's no way to separate independence if you're the party, the state, no, all in bed together. And I also mentioned the best part of the United States, why people come here, we could invest here, is you can buy influence. There's legal and proper channels to lobby or to buy influence or to help a campaign. But you cannot break the law. There are clear laws for that. And if you break the law, it doesn't matter who you are, you will be prosecuted. And that's the beauty of it. And that ties into the different governance model. This doesn't mean this model will work for certain countries. Am I right? It doesn't work for a lot of places.
No, democracy has to be learned. It has to be experienced, particularly for people or populations that have been accustomed to what I may call authoritarian rule, where other people make the decisions for them. This is a very difficult balancing act, and it requires ethical behavior, legal behavior by people involved, the common citizen. It requires a lot of patience because sometimes government works slowly. There's no one at the top can say, I make this decision and you implement it. Oh, no, we argue. The administration argues with the Congress. The Congress sets budgets. The administration cannot spend money that the Congress does not budget. And that is also a great example of what's going on right now in the United States to, quote, fight the virus, because Congress is not budgeting some of the things that the administration would want, and there are legitimate arguments all going around now, and it is a very inefficient process, but it gets played out in public. Another aspect is transparency. Most everything is played out in public. There are backroom deals, of course, but very few relative to the total.
所以我们刚刚讲到哈，这个美国一个民主的模式，当然也会跟我们这个抗灾抗疫情也有关系。他说这个因为不是一个独裁的国家，不是一个专制的国家，所以任何的这个 policy， 任何的这个法律或是新的行动都不可以由一个总统或是总理或是书记立刻说了就可以办到，要经过这个讨论，经过这个国会啊，经过不同层次的检验跟媒体，所以这个 process 这个程序上是会比较慢，而且但至少还是高度的透明。当然还是会有一些这些小的案件，但是大致上是这样子。所以意思说，对于Jim来说，这个疫情没有控制好，其实跟国会有关。当然，我是非常不同意的。I was telling the audience, of course, I completely disagree with the fact that, yeah, I agree with process transparency, but this pandemic control has nothing to do with Congress. It starts at the top, the leadership wearing a mask, saying it's blaming it on another country. However, do you mind if we talk a little bit about, since we brought up pandemic, could you talk about Herman Cain and how it has affected you personally?
Oh, yes, sure. Herman Cain was a gentleman, very high profile. He was a very successful businessman. He ran for president in 2000 and I believe it was 12. 12, yes. He was a candidate. He ran against Mitt Romney.
That's right.
He did not make it for the Republican nomination, but nevertheless, he made a great deal of publicity. A lot of people followed him. He was very healthy. And he decided to attend a rally hosted by President Trump on June 20th. He did not wear a mask. He was actually proud of not wearing a mask. A few days later, he became sick. He had a fever, had a shortness of breath. He went to the hospital. They gave him a test. He tested positive. Within 10 days of the rally that he attended, he was in the hospital, and 20 days after that, he passed away. It was very quick, very strong, very strong. He had no, what they call comorbidities. He had no other illnesses. That made a big impression on me. I must admit, I have been rather casual about observing some of these protocols and protections. But after that experience, I am much more serious about that from now on.
You know, I'm glad to hear that because we all have people we love that we care about, that we're wearing a mask and following protocols for them, not just for us. But it is really sad for me because Herman Cain is proud to not wear a mask because his president told him not to. That's a hoax. He passed away, and it's sad. We shouldn't say anything bad about him. What about the people that he gave it to? We don't know the impact, right? He could have affected a lot of people, and a lot of people.
We don't know, and he never knew.
Yeah.
He didn't know who gave it to him.
We knew for 8 months there's a pandemic. We knew for 6 months since March that it is bad. Yet it took Herman Cain to pass away a month ago for us to really think, oh, wow, this is real. This showcases what Trump's administration has done. I mean, isn't it enough to prove that there is a problem? Because we know it's bad. The numbers have not lied. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would Trump tell people not to wear a mask and be proud of it? That is a hoax. I keep repeating this because it doesn't look like it's going to get better. People like me and you are quarantining or socially distanced, following protocol. Mm-hmm. But there's still a lot of people that don't because they don't have symptoms or people around them are not dead, right? Or they think it's weak. It's the American way. It's weak to wear a mask. Our president doesn't wear a mask. Our president says no. It's already ingrained in them, right? It's the left, it's the liberals, it's the progressives, it's China, it's everybody else but yourself. But all the other countries, whether it's Europe or South America, New Zealand, they beat it because everyone wear a mask because their leadership insisted on it. Believe in science. That's all I'm saying. Believe in science. Let me translate what we just said.
Yeah, sure.
This is important. This shows our audience how news and your political affiliation has affected a logical, scientific thinking of normal Americans. Instead of listening to CDC and medical professionals, we started listening to our political leaders. And our political leaders did not listen to medical advice or science anymore, up until someone famous in that particular party passed away. 我们讲到这个让我很气愤，所以你看我 like Jim is like what was so worked up. I told Jim earlier before we started taping, somebody very close to me got it too, and it could affect all of us. So we're all getting tested. 对我来说很感慨，因为我身边有认识的人也有得到的。然后我们我们一直在隔离，但是我们还是要去检验。Jim 说他过去一直到1个月以前，他对这个并没有很在意，他并没有去真的 follow 这个 rule。他家里有年长的这个他的丈母娘也住在他家。Jim 本身也是一个以年纪来说也是一个 high risk 的，但是他刚讲得很清楚，他说他没有，让我很惊讶，这代表大部分美国人的想法，尤其是共和党支持者的想法，Jim 并没有真的很在意，一直到1个月前 ，Herman Cain 是2012年的共和党的总统的参选人之一，他并没有赢到这个 nomination， 但是很出名，是很著名的企业家。他在1个月前参加了共和党川普的造势大会，照了很多相，没有戴口罩，因为他的总统叫他不要戴口罩，他很骄傲，对不对？他觉得戴口罩是违反他的这个领导。结果短短20天之内，从确诊到去世只有20天。Cain 是一个他的经济能力很好，有钱就可以治好病。It proves that money doesn't really save you in this case. A lot of times, extreme wealth could help you, right? But this disease takes everyone. It's the same for everyone. 所以呢 Herman Cain 他去世之后，让 Jim 他讲的其实也代表了很多共和党的想法。Jim 就说，因为这件事情让他才觉得很重要。可是我刚刚就觉得很难过，我不是生气，因为不能怪 Jim。1个月前才知道，中国8个月前就知道有疫情，7个月前就已经封城，6个月前美国就已经知道纽约就很严重。过去这半年都是浪费了，一直到1个月前才觉得，因为共和党的大佬死了，你才觉得。可是你有没有想过，之前中国死了多少人，全世界死了多少人？为什么不相信科学，不相信医学专家？为什么要听这个川疯子的话？因为他叫你不要戴口罩，一直要等到1个月才开始。那过去这已经传出去给多少人了？所以我现在激动的是说，因为这种想法才会让美国走到这一步。我们还有2个月、3个月就要选举了。未来这3个月，希望大家真的要保重，因为不管你人在哪里，全世界的这个经济啊跟这个交通都是通着的。美国不好，全世界也不会好，因为很多人会来往往。It's going to be very hard. I was telling our audience first about Herman Cain, but I also said that no matter what, there's 3 more months to election. We really hope this pandemic is under control and dies down, because every country could be out of it, but as long as the United States is not, then it will never be safe. Not because we live here, it's because we do the most trade with every country. Commerce, trade, traveling, it affects everyone in the world. And I'm telling our audience, especially the ones in North America and Houston, to please take care, stay healthy, follow protocol, follow the rules like Jim has been doing, to protect yourself and protect your loved ones.
Very good. And the other factor is we're not going to be safe until there's a vaccine. And we all know that. And so we have to learn to live with many of these protections until a vaccine is not only made proven that it works, but it has to be distributed widely enough, quickly enough, and tested confidently enough that people have confidence, because the biggest issue right now is not the virus itself. It's the fear that the virus has created. And I see more and more people afraid of the physical aspects, of the economic and financial aspects, and now of the political aspects of what has come from.
We wouldn't be afraid if everyone just wore their mask and listened and not have parties and kept the restaurants closed like all the other countries that made it. New Zealand, Korea, Singapore. I mean, I don't want to start. Every country has made it. Everybody has done. Even China is done. You don't even need a vaccine anymore because it's eradicated. There's small breakouts, but the fear is Actually, I think people should be more afraid. Why are they not afraid of this? I don't want my mother to die, my children to die. I don't want you to get it and die, Jim. So I am afraid. And vaccine won't change this mentality. Like you said, I agree. Vaccine needs to be distributed. Who gets it first? Whether it works, it will take months, years. The fear is not because economy is not bad because the fear unfounded. This fear is real. If people are more afraid, maybe this would have stopped. Maybe people would wear a mask and not have parties and go to bars and not go to rallies and political conventions without a mask.
Right. And part of the reason that the fear is as strong as it is, and your argument is the fear is not strong enough. People should be more afraid given the reality. But the reason that it's so fearful, people are so fearful now, much more than they were back in March and April, is because people were afraid in March and April. Then it looked like we were in good shape, and people began to unlock and to grow again. And people went out, they got sick again, and now we're back again. Many of the scientists warned that this scenario would occur. And let me just give you an example, a non-US example, New Zealand. Up until about 2 weeks ago, New Zealand had only 1 or 2 or 3, a very, very small number of cases. But somebody got off a ship in New Zealand last week, and all of a sudden, they had 10 or 12 or 25 more cases, and they immediately locked down all over again.
What was our lockdown?
Yeah.
Mayor Turner was criticized. County Judge Hidalgo was criticized by politics, but they were right from the beginning. Do people go back and say, oh gosh, I was wrong for attacking you, Ms. Judge. I'm sorry for attacking you, Mr. Mayor, because you guys were right? No. Everyone forgets that. They were criticized. But Jim, we could talk about this all day because I'm mad, because you know why I'm mad. Because like I said, death is knocking closer and closer. And for people like us that have been social distance, I haven't seen friends. I haven't been out to dinner. I want to have the beer and see my friends and watch the NBA playoffs. Mm-hmm. I want to watch football. I want to go out and play in the gym. And I can't.
No, you can't.
I could because I'm strong and I'm young. But I didn't because I do care about my fellow citizens. I respect them.
And your family.
And my family. And I respect
the responsibilities that you have.
Trying to protect them. Yeah. Jim, thank you so much. Look, we have so much to talk about. We'll continue next week because, I mean, there's going to be so much change coming up. This pandemic is not going to go away. We pray for everyone, all of our audience, to stay safe and healthy. I pray for your family to stay safe and healthy. We really, I mean, I read the Bible more. That's all I got to say. That's all we could do.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy. There's so much next week and for every week thereafter. Bye bye.
下礼拜再见，各位观众。我们还有很多要讲的。我们讲到这个疫情是讲不完的。我刚刚提到了说这个大家华人，尤其华人，我们都很小心。但是你看看很多主流、很多白人的这个想法还是不一样的。这个媒体跟这个他们这个用政治的这个政治化变得很糟糕。像我对休斯顿的这个市长跟郡长都觉得很不公平。4-5个月前他们都想要 lockdown， 都是很要规定在手上，然后被这个共和党这极右团体骂的狗血淋头，哇！我这个是违反到我的个人的隐私 ，my personal liberty， 我有自己的自由可以不用。最终他们证实是对的，但是有人会回顾来说，哦，对不起，没有的，因为这已经完全政治化了。不管怎么样，各位还是祝各位能够保住身体的健康最重要，继续在隔离之中，希望我们这个疫情能够早日结束。大家保重，拜拜。Thank you, Jim.
Bye bye. Thanks, Jimmy. Bye bye.